You remember how the guns stopped? How the men looked at each other across no man's land like they'd forgotten what a human face looked like without a gas mask or a helmet shadow. They thought that was the end. It wasn't. It was the beginning of something slower, colder, more insidious. The war didn't end on November 11th, 1918. It changed shape. It moved from the trenches into treaty rooms, bread queues, unemployment lines, veterans' hospitals, newspaper headlines, and the heads of millions who could never unsee what they had seen. This is the story of how one event triggered the deadliest conflict humanity have ever seen. I'm your host, and this is Talemaster Legend Series. Welcome. What you're about to learn isn't just about a single event. It is about how the entire structure of Europe, centuries of alliances, rivalries, imperial ambitions, and nationalist fervor is balanced on a knife's edge. One moment changed everything. In this episode, we're uncovering the hidden rivalries that divided Europe into two hostile camps and exact reasons how all these catastrophic events triggered all in sudden. This is not a victory parade. This is the story of what happened when the shooting stopped and the real bleeding began. November 12, 1918. The newspaper screamed peace. Church bells rang from Edinburgh to Marseille. But in the hospitals, the dying continued. Spanish influenza, misnamed because Spain reported it honestly while others censored, had already killed more people than the war itself in some estimates. It loved crowds. It loved troop ships. It loved demobilization camps. In the American Expeditionary Forces alone, more men died of flu in the last 2 months of 1918 than in combat during the entire Meuse-Argonne offensive. Soldiers who had survived 4 years of lead and gas were buried in their greatcoats because there weren't enough coffins. Back home, the welcome was uneven. Some towns threw parades, others had no one left to march. The lost generation wasn't a poetic phrase yet, it was a literal body count. In Germany, the home front collapsed faster than the army. Berlin, December 1918, Spartacist uprising. Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht murdered by Freikorps, former soldiers who hated communists more than they hated the Allies. The Weimar Republic was born in blood and named after a quiet town nobody had heard of. Food riots, coal shortages, children with rickets because milk had gone to the front for years. In France, the joy lasted about 3 weeks. Then the casualty lists, delayed by months, started arriving. Villages that sent 200 men to war got back 40. The mutilated, the mutilated, became a common sight. Men with faces rebuilt by plastic surgery, arms replaced by hooks, legs by wooden struts. They begged on street corners, while politicians promised a land fit for heroes. Britain's promise was even emptier. Lloyd George's election slogan, "Hang the Kaiser" and "Make Germany pay." The public wanted revenge, the treasury wanted reparations, the generals wanted a buffer. Nobody asked the soldiers what they wanted. Most just wanted to sleep without nightmares. June 28, 1919, Hall of Mirrors, Palace of Versailles. Exactly 5 years to the day since Sarajevo. The German delegation, led by Brockdorff-Rantzau, sat like defendants in a trial. They were not allowed to negotiate. They were handed the treaty and told to sign. Article 231, the War Guilt Clause. Germany, and only Germany, accepted full moral responsibility for starting the war. No mention of alliances, no mention of mobilization timetables, no mention of Austria's ultimatum to Serbia, just guilt. Reparations, 132 billion gold marks. Territory, Alsace-Lorraine to France, Eupen-Malmedy to Belgium, Northern Schleswig to Denmark, West Prussia and Posen to Poland, creating the Polish corridor that cut East Prussia off from the Reich. Danzig, a free city. Saarland under League of Nations control for 15 years, coal mines to France. Upper Silesia, plebiscite. All colonies stripped. Army limited to 100,000 men. No tanks, no air force, no submarines, no general staff. Navy, 6 old battleships, no dreadnoughts. Rhineland demilitarized. The German delegates protested. Brockdorff-Rantzau spoke. "We are not without guilt, but we deny that Germany alone bears the guilt." The hall was silent. Then Clemenceau, Lloyd George, Wilson stared them down. "Sign or we resume the war." They signed. The next day, German newspapers carried black borders. The stab in the back myth was born that afternoon. Meanwhile, other treaties carved up the map. Treaty of Saint-Germain, Austria reduced to a small republic, forbidden to unite with Germany. Treaty of Trianon. Hungary lost 2/3 of its territory, millions of ethnic Hungarians stranded in new states. Treaty of Neuilly, Bulgaria shrunk. Treaty of Sèvres, Ottoman Empire dismantled. Greece given Smyrna. Kurdistan promised independence. Armenia created. Straits internationalized. Zones of influence for Britain, France, Italy. Turkey refused to accept it. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk fought a war of independence. By 1923, Sèvres was dead. The Treaty of Lausanne replaced it, but the damage was done. New states, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Poland, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, were created with borders drawn by tired diplomats who had never visited the places. Ethnic minorities trapped inside new majorities, irredentism planted everywhere. They came home to a world that had moved on without them. In Britain, the land fit for heroes became unemployment, the general strike of 1926, means tests for benefits. Ex-servicemen sold matches on street corners. In France, the poilu returned to inflation, political instability, the cartel de gauche, the right-wing leagues. The mutilated wore medals and begged. In Germany, hyperinflation, 1923, a loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. Wheelbarrows of cash for groceries. Children used banknotes as building blocks. Middle-class savings wiped out. Resentment grew. The Freikorps became the early SA. Hitler's beer hall putsch failed 1923, succeeded in myth. In America, the Doughboys returned to Prohibition, the Red Scare, the Palmer Raids, the Ku Klux Klan revival, the Tulsa Massacre, the Immigration Acts of 1921 and 1924. The Jazz Age danced over their graves. Literature tried to speak. Erich Maria Remarque, All Quiet on the Western Front, 1929. Wilfred Owen's poems published posthumously. Hemingway, Dos Passos, Cummings, Graves, Sassoon. They wrote because they could not speak. The silence at dinner tables was louder than any barrage. Mothers who lost 3 sons, wives who nursed husbands with shell shock. Shell shock, later called war neurosis, then PTSD, was epidemic. Men who froze at sudden noises, who woke screaming, who drank themselves numb. Asylums filled. Suicides were hushed up. The war didn't end in 1918. It lived in the nerves of a generation. The League of Nations opened in Geneva. No army, no power. America never joined. Germany joined late, left early. Japan walked out. Italy mocked it. The mandate system rebranded colonies as sacred trust. Britain took Iraq, Palestine, Transjordan. France took Syria, Lebanon. The Middle East carved up in secret rooms. Sykes-Picot executed. Iraq rebellion crushed 1920. Palestine promises conflicting. Seeds of future wars. Ireland, War of Independence 1919 to 1921. Civil War 1922 to 1923. Partition. The Kura mutinies ghost lingered. India, Amritsar Massacre 1919. Gandhi's non-cooperation. The Raj cracked. China, May 4th movement 1919. Warlord era. Japan's rise. The 1920s roared for some. For most who fought, they were the years of quiet screaming. By 1933, the last German reparations payment was still decades away. By 1939, a veteran of the trenches was Germany's chancellor. The peace had failed. Not because it was too harsh or too lenient, because it pretended the war had solved anything. It hadn't. It had only paused. The war ended. The wounds never did. This is just the beginning of a story. In future episodes, we'll explore the Western Front, warfare, the rise of new weapons, the strategies of great generals, and the human cost of these conflicts. If you want to understand the history that shaped the modern world, subscribe to Tale Master Legend series. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.